I never thought switching barbershops for just one haircut could change the rhythm of my entire day, or maybe even more. It was supposed to be quick, just a trim before my best friend's birthday dinner. Nothing meaningful. But the moment I walked into that unfamiliar shop and locked eyes with the guy holding the clippers, I felt something shift. What would you do if your barbershop visit turned into way more than just a haircut? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps the video reach more people, and we truly appreciate it. And hey, thank you. It really means a lot to us. Now let's get back to story. Not in a loud, dramatic way, no, it was quieter than that, but unmistakably real. I'd been going to the same place for years. A classic, no-frills barbershop run by an older guy who never asked too many questions and always got the job done right. But this morning, when I called, I got a friendly but firm, "We're fully booked till next week, sorry." That would have been fine under normal circumstances, but with a big night out looming and my hair edging into messy territory, I didn't have the luxury to wait. So I did what I rarely do, I changed the plan. I searched online, scrolled through reviews, and landed on a place just a few blocks away from my apartment. It had a modern look in the photos, and more importantly, it had a last-minute appointment available. As I stepped through the glass door of Halo Cuts, the chime above me gave a cheerful jingle. The space smelled like clean linen, aftershave, and faint cologne. The lighting was warm, the leather chairs sleek and inviting, and soft indie music played from overhead. I scanned the shop quickly, half expecting a crowd, but it was surprisingly quiet. Then I saw him. He was standing near the back, rearranging products on a shelf. Young, maybe 10 years younger than me, lean and confident with that easy kind of swagger that wasn't forced. His dark brown hair was tied up in a short bun, and his arms, inked in fine-line tattoos, moved gracefully as he worked. The moment he turned and caught me watching him, he smiled. But it wasn't just polite. It lingered. "Hey," he said, walking over with a towel slung over his shoulder. "You must be Daniel?" I nodded, clearing my throat. "Yeah, first time here." "Well," he said, offering a hand, "I'm Leo. I've got you." His palm was warm, his grip firm but relaxed. That single touch sent something through me I hadn't felt in a while. A flicker of something playful, something curious. He gestured toward the second chair from the window, and I sat, suddenly aware of my heartbeat. Maybe it was just nerves, or maybe it was him. The way his fingers lightly brushed the back of my neck as he fastened the cape. The way he moved behind me with practiced precision. "So," he said, meeting my eyes in the mirror, "what are we doing today?" "Just a clean-up," I replied, voice steadier than I expected. "Got a thing tonight." "A thing, huh?" He smirked. "Date." "Birthday," I said quickly. "A friend's. But I guess it's a date with a camera. There'll be too many photos." He laughed. Low, genuine, a little teasing, and something about that sound settled into my chest. He started clipping, combing, snipping, his focus sharp, his movements controlled. But every now and then, his fingers grazed the side of my face or paused a little longer near my ear, and each of those subtle moments made me hold my breath. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. But then again, I'd never had a barber lean in quite this close when adjusting my sideburns, or brush his fingertips down the curve of my neck like it was part of the process. And he kept talking, asking about my job, my favorite restaurants, what I usually did on weekends. Not in the way barbers do to fill the silence, but like he really wanted to know. I found myself answering honestly, laughing more than I usually did, wanting the haircut to take a little longer. At one point, when he brushed away the loose hair from my shoulders, his hand lingered near my collarbone. Our eyes met in the mirror again, and something unspoken passed between us. There was a shift in the air, small but electric. "I'm almost done," he said, softer this time, voice lower. "But you're welcome to hang around a bit after if you're not in a rush." I swallowed, pulse quickening. "Actually, I've got a few minutes." He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving mine. "Cool. I was hoping you might." Leo cleaned up the last few strands of hair around my neck with a soft bristled brush, moving with care, like he was aware of how every touch landed. The cape slid off with a quiet rustle, and I sat there for a second longer than I needed to, watching him in the mirror. He was focused, wiping down his clippers with a towel. His sleeves pushed up, showing more of those inked forearms. His hands looked strong and capable, the kind of hands that stayed in your thoughts a little too long after you shook them. I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my shirt. "You've got a good eye," I said, admiring the fresh cut in the mirror. "Feels like I dropped a few years." Leo smiled and leaned against the counter. "You didn't need much help in that department." He let the words hang in the air for just a second, then added, "But I'm glad you like it." The pause that followed was quiet but charged. I wasn't sure if I should say thank you and leave, or if maybe he was waiting for something more for me to stay. I felt strangely warm, not just from the hairdryer heat still lingering on my neck, but from the way he kept looking at me like I wasn't just another customer. "I'll finish locking up," he said after a beat, glancing toward the front of the shop. "You don't have to go yet if you don't want to. You know if you need a touch-up or just want to sit a minute." I raised an eyebrow, just enough to match the grin starting to pull at my lips. "Are you always this generous with your customers?" He met my gaze. "Only the ones I don't want to walk out just yet." I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. Instead, I followed him with my eyes as he walked over to the glass door, flipped the sign to closed, and locked it with a satisfying click. The sound echoed in the quiet of the shop. I didn't sit back down in the chair. I just stood near the counter waiting, not sure what for exactly, but feeling like something had already begun and I didn't want to miss it. Leo returned, slower this time, and leaned beside me. "You said you had time. You still do." I nodded once, barely breathing. "Good," he said quietly, eyes flicking to mine. "Come with me." He walked toward a door at the back of the shop, next to the stock shelves and behind a thick navy curtain. It was just a utility room, small and dimly lit, with a few chairs, an old leather couch pushed against the wall, and a sink in the corner. But the second the curtain fell shut behind us, it felt like stepping out of time. Everything slowed down. Leo turned to face me, now just a foot away. His eyes searched mine, looking for something: doubt, hesitation, resistance, but I didn't give him any of those. "Look," he started, voice softer now. "I know this might feel fast, but I saw the way you looked at me. And I'm not the kind of guy who usually acts on something like this. But today, you're not the only one," I said before he could finish. And then I reached up and touched his jaw. He leaned into the touch like he'd been waiting for it, and the next thing I knew, we were kissing. It wasn't rushed. His lips moved against mine slowly, like he was tasting a thought, savoring something he'd only imagined until now. His hand found my waist, fingers pressing gently through the fabric of my shirt. I pressed closer, drawn in by something I couldn't name but didn't want to question. The kiss deepened and I felt his breath against my skin, his hand sliding up my back with an ease that made me melt into him. My own fingers moved through his hair, tugging lightly, and he let out a quiet sound that sent a wave through me. It was the kind of kiss that didn't just stir want, it stirred something deeper. Something new. We broke away for a breath and Leo looked at me like he wasn't sure if this was real. "It's real," I whispered. "Whatever this is, it's real." He nodded once and pulled me in again, slower this time, as though trying to memorize the moment. And in the quiet hum of that back room, surrounded by clippers, towels, and the soft thud of our hearts, the rest of the world just fell away. There was something surreal about the way Leo held me, like he'd done it before, in a memory we hadn't actually made yet. We were still standing in that back room, the air around us warm and still, the hum of distant traffic barely audible through the walls. Time wasn't moving the way it usually did. Everything had slowed to just the sound of our breathing and the gentle rustle of our clothes brushing as we moved closer. His hands roamed with intention, not rushed, not hesitant, just curious and sure. They slid over my back, fingers dipping at my waist and pulling me in until I felt the full heat of his body against mine. It sent a wave through me that started low in my stomach and spread to the tips of my fingers. "You feel good?" Leo murmured, his lips hovering near my jaw. I could feel his breath there, warm and teasing, and it made my skin rise with anticipation. "Your trouble," I said softly, smiling through the rush of nerves and want. "You know that, right?" He smiled against my skin. "Only for the right people." His mouth trailed down my neck, slow and deliberate, and I felt my pulse hammer beneath every kiss. The weight of his body, the warmth of his hands, the way he touched me like he was discovering something, it was overwhelming in the best possible way. My hands found his back, sliding beneath the hem of his t-shirt, and he tilted his head back slightly as if savoring the feeling of my fingers on his skin. We moved toward the couch, stumbling just a little, laughing under our breath like two people who'd forgotten how the world worked outside of this one room. He sat first and pulled me gently down with him. I straddled his lap without thinking, knees braced on either side of his thighs, both of us now chest to chest, eye to eye. There was no turning back now, and neither of us wanted to. He kissed me again, deeper this time, like all the air in the room belonged to us. My hands moved through his hair again, tugging just enough to make him groan softly, and I felt his hands slide beneath my shirt, fingers exploring the skin of my lower back. The way he touched me wasn't aggressive or urgent. It was thoughtful, deliberate, almost reverent. Every inch he caressed felt like a question, and my body answered without words. I leaned into every movement, every brush of his fingertips, every quiet sound he made when our hips shifted closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Tell me if I need to stop." I looked him in the eyes, saw the honesty there, and shook my head slowly. "Don't." Clothes didn't come off all at once. They peeled away in layers, like we were unwrapping something sacred. He slid my shirt up and over my head, running his hands down my chest like he needed to learn me by feel. I returned the favor, pulling off his shirt and letting my hands explore the lines of his shoulders, his arms, the firm warmth of his torso beneath my palms. The kisses didn't stop. They just changed, some rough, some slow, some that barely touched the skin but sent shivers all the same. By the time we settled more fully into the couch, legs tangled, chests rising and falling in tandem, I felt like I was floating, like I wasn't just being touched, but seen, completely clearly. We didn't speak much. The quiet between us was its own language. Every movement, every sigh, every stroke of his thumb against my ribs or my jaw said more than words ever could. And when we finally rested, still pressed together in the hush of that back room, I realized I hadn't felt this alive in years. Leo looked up at me, his smile soft and a little dazed. "That was unexpected." I nodded, brushing a bit of hair from his forehead. "Yeah, and kind of perfect." He leaned in again, kissing me gently. "You're not just saying that because I gave you the best cut of your life?" I laughed against his mouth. That might have been true before, but now, that feels like the least important part of today. We stayed like that for a while, our bodies still pressed close, arms loosely wrapped around each other like neither of us wanted to let go just yet. The silence in the room wasn't awkward. It was full of things we hadn't said, of questions that didn't need answers, of a comfort I hadn't realized I was missing until now. I glanced at the clock above the storage shelf and blinked. I was supposed to be across town an hour ago. Leo tilted his head back, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Birthday party?" I nodded, running a hand through my hair, still slightly damp from where he'd styled it earlier. "Yeah, I promised I'd show up looking decent." "Well," he said, brushing his fingers gently along my jaw, "you definitely look better than decent." His compliment landed somewhere deeper than I expected. I wasn't used to that, the way he looked at me like I was something worth noticing, worth pausing for. And I think part of me didn't want to go back out there just yet. The world outside felt suddenly less interesting, less vibrant, compared to the warmth of this unexpected connection. I slowly sat up, reaching for my shirt, and Leo leaned forward, helping me pull it back on, his hands grazing my sides just enough to leave goosebumps in their wake. He stood next and pulled on his own shirt, though he didn't button it all the way, just left it open enough for his collarbone to peek through. He caught me looking and grinned. "See something you like?" he asked playfully. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He walked over to the small sink in the corner and poured us both a glass of water, handing me one like we'd done this before. Like this wasn't just some impulsive moment, but something repeatable. Familiar. Wanted. "You don't have to rush off," he said, leaning against the counter. "Unless you've got cake and candles waiting." I chuckled. Honestly, I think this might have been the highlight of the day already. His expression softened, his teasing easing into something gentler. "You know, most guys who sit in that chair don't end up back here." "I'd hope not," I said, and we both laughed. But, he added, his tone quieter, you felt different. I don't know. I noticed the way you looked at me when you walked in. Like you saw me. Not just a barber. Not just a stranger. I nodded slowly. I did. And you looked back. He walked over to me again, standing close, not touching this time, just letting the space between us buzz with everything that had happened. I'm not usually this bold, I admitted, my voice softer than before. But something about today felt like it wasn't meant to go the usual way. He smiled, that same slow, deliberate kind of smile that had started all of this. I think we both felt that. We lingered a bit longer, sharing small, lingering touches, a hand grazing an arm, a thumb brushing a wrist, the kind of physical language that says this might be the end of a moment, but not the end of us. I could already feel myself replaying the way his mouth had moved on mine, the way his hands had found the exact places that made me sigh without thinking. Finally, I sighed and reached for my jacket. I really should go. Leo helped me with the collar, adjusting it carefully, almost ceremoniously. You're welcome to come back anytime, he said. Haircut or not. I met his eyes. I think I will. He leaned in one last time, pressing a slow kiss to my cheek. It lingered there, warm and soft, long after I stepped back out into the world. The breeze outside hit me with a jolt, not because it was cold, but because it was real. The sunlight, the honking cars, the low chatter of people walking past. All of it felt slightly removed, like I had stepped out of some intimate pocket of time and now had to find my footing in reality again. I walked down the block slowly, jacket open, fingers brushing absently at the place Leo had kissed my cheek. It wasn't dramatic or grand, just soft and intentional, but I could still feel it. I didn't expect the memory of that kiss to follow me all the way to the subway, but it did. By the time I arrived at my friend's birthday dinner, the party was already in full swing. Music played from someone's Bluetooth speaker, and there was laughter coming from the kitchen. I smiled and made the rounds, hugging people, accepting a drink, pretending like everything felt normal. But I kept thinking about Leo. I kept thinking about the way his hand had steadied my jaw when he trimmed the sides of my hair. The way his voice dropped just a little when he asked if I had time. The way I'd let myself fall into that moment with him without hesitation, like it had been waiting for me all along. At some point during the party, I slipped into the bathroom and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The haircut still looked great, crisp lines, a clean fade, effortlessly sharp, but it wasn't the style that held my attention. It was my expression. There was a softness in my face I hadn't seen in a long time. Not tired, not stressed, not going through the motions. Just awake. I reached for my phone without thinking, opened my messages, and stared at Leo's number sitting in my recent calls. We hadn't texted yet. There hadn't been time. But I knew if I sent something, he'd respond. Probably quickly. I typed. That cut really did change my day. Then deleted it. Too vague. I tried again. Next time, maybe I'll skip the haircut and just ask for the back room. Deleted. Too much. After a long pause, I finally typed. Still thinking about earlier. Not sure what today was, but I'd like to find out. I stared at it for a few seconds, then hit send. Less than a minute later, he replied. Same. Let's figure it out. I close early on Thursday. Come by. My heart kicked once, hard. Then it settled into something warm. I returned to the party, drink in hand, smile easier now. People talked, joked, passed around cake. But somewhere under all of it, I was already thinking about Thursday, about Leo, about the back room, about what happens next when a moment doesn't end at goodbye. Thursday came faster than I expected. The week blurred by, but not in the way it usually did. Not the kind of blur filled with emails and meetings and nights that disappeared in front of a screen. This time, it was a blur filled with anticipation. Every time my phone buzzed, I half hoped it was Leo, and sometimes it was little texts, quick check-ins, a photo of his dog napping in the shop, a message saying, "You've been on my mind more than I expected." That one stuck with me, because I felt the same way, but hadn't said it out loud. By the time Thursday afternoon rolled around, I found myself standing outside his shop again, earlier than I needed to be if I was honest. I hesitated a second before going in, heart racing a little, palms unreasonably warm. Leo looked up from his station when I stepped inside. "Hey," he said, with that same slow smile that had started this whole thing. "You're early." I shrugged, closing the door behind me. Didn't feel like waiting. He finished wiping down the chair in front of him, then walked over slowly, like he wasn't quite sure if we were going to start with a hug or something more. I met him halfway, my hand slipping easily around the back of his neck, pulling him in for a kiss. This one was different from the first. Slower, more certain. It wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about knowing we both wanted to be right here. "I thought about you all week," he said quietly against my mouth. "I noticed," I murmured back, brushing his jaw with my fingers. "Your texts kind of gave you away." He laughed, resting his forehead against mine for a second. Then he stepped back and gestured toward the chairs. "You want the usual? Or?" I tilted my head. "You tell me. Do I need a haircut?" He gave me a long look. "Not really." "Then no cape this time," I said, smirking. "Just you." We didn't go to the back room immediately. First, we sat, side by side, coffee in hand, music playing low in the background. We talked more than we had the first time. He told me about how he'd moved to the city 3 years ago, how opening this place had been both a dream and a gamble. I told him about my job, the deadlines I never seemed to escape, and how I hadn't realized until now how little space I left for things that felt. Eventually, our hands found each other on the armrest between us, fingers intertwining like it was the most natural thing. And when the moment came, when he finally stood and reached for my hand, I didn't hesitate. Back in the quiet of the utility room, it was like nothing had changed, and yet everything had. We kissed again, deeper this time. His hands were still strong, still thoughtful. Mine remembered every curve of his back, the slope of his shoulders. We moved together like we'd been here before, like this moment had been waiting for us to return to it and stay. We didn't need to rush. The spark was still there, but now it came with something else. A warmth, tenderness, the kind that doesn't burn up in one night. When we finally settled on the couch again, chests rising in rhythm, Leo brushed my hair back gently and said, "You coming back next week?" I smiled, breathing in the scent of him, the softness of his shirt against my cheek. "Yeah, but not for a haircut." He laughed, kissing my forehead. "I was hoping you'd say that." And just like that, the story didn't feel like an ending anymore. It felt like a beginning of something unexpected, something good, something we both wanted to see through.